Hi, welcome in my PHP framework. This is my framework for PHP. It's built from scratch, no need for any dependency or any package. This is framework start from index.php. Everything will be rerouted from htaccess to index. Now this we defined through two variables, base file and project subfolder. Also, if we need, this is just for the test vendor phpunit, and then we load our main class in our platform. This class load classes will load the classes and auto load classes from the namespaces. This class here, core load spaces, load the classes, and here the auto register for our classes, and here the way how to include the class, the wanted class from the route. The route system will be here. This is a class will analysis our link and redirect us for the correct class. The routes defined here. We can change this routes from the config. We can change the place of this of the routes from here. We can change the route PHP. Okay, this routes just contain a location or the link which we will click or visit, the class we want to run, and the method which we will start from. If we see here, register controller main will be in the modules register controller main. The first thing will be run index. When we request this link post method by post method, then the post index will be run post index. Now we have our module, we have databases, the database, we have interface for the database, and the database should be contain a query method. This is connector will choose what the database will be started, if it's MySQL or SQLite. If we check config here, we have two types of database, MySQL and SQLite. Then the connector will select the database and return database classes, which MySQL or SQLite, just by changing the configuration here, database type SQLite or MySQL. The core classes. Core classes is the main classes will be loaded when we run the framework. Folder and files. This is where we save the main files and folders for our framework. Base modules. This base modules will contain the base for all controllers which will called from the routes controller and renders the files, HTML files. Base routes will run our routes and redirect us for the correct controller. This is simply our framework. It's very simple framework and doesn't depend on any vendor or any. Let's see an example. Here we have a form, a simple form, and send SMS to verify, and verification code will be returned here. You will receive it and insert it here. Then if we click register, here we have to fill the data, name, last, email should be ended with with .com. Now we insert our phone. Then if we register, now the verification code will be sent. If we click here, then the message of successful of sending the verification code will be appear here. Then we receive the verification, we insert it here, and we complete our registration. How this work in our framework? Now if we return to our framework, the first thing will be load from our routes is the index in the main controller. Here the main controller will include index. Index just render the HTML file, which index here will render this file just. And now when we click register or send SMS to verify, it will go to the post index here. Post index will route us for verify or register. Let's start with register. Register will validate our data. Here we have a validator, which here in the register just validate the email. The email and the other validation, here we have a validate base controller. To validate email and alpha, we can change this validation from the configuration here, and validation we can change email or alpha, the pattern of email and the pattern of alpha or digit or font. And with this message, we know if we need to local this message, we need to insert the localization, not the message itself. Okay, then when we come back here we have collect the error messages or validation messages, then return to the message list. If the message list count 0, then we can complete the registration. The registration will be going from the database repository. The database repository here just have the functions which will deal with the database. In this design, we can test our database separately from our main class. Here we have 3 functions called the connection database, which will determine what's our database and return an object from our database. This is repository. The database can be tested alone because we use dependency injection. We inject the database repository from the constructor. It's null, it will generate a new one, and we will see benefit of this in our testing. We can change it. Okay, then if the registration complete successfully or failed, the result will return to the register result. Okay, and we will display even the success or fail. Otherwise, if the validation, not the registration itself, if the validation is not correct, we will pass the messages to the HTML file, to the HTML, and the HTML will render the error messages. Now, if we click on verify to send our phone, first thing we check if the phone is valid phone number. If it's valid phone number, we send verify code with for our phone number. The send verify code is a private function, and we will see how to test a private function. Then we go to the database. From the database we get verification code from our phone. We generate a new one if it's not exist, and if it's exist, we update a new one. If the result of inserting a verification code is okay, we send through SMS dependency. SMS will send to this phone a verification code. This function send here, just take the parameters from the config file here, the provider and other things, then it is send it to it's send the verify the phone. Okay, if the result will be verify is success, and send verification code generate is success, and send success. If those are two are correct, the verify result here will be true. Then we can complete. The message will be success, send verification code. Okay, the database repository, the first one, get verification code. We will generate a random number for 4 digits. Then we check if it's exists in the database, the phone number for the phone number. If it exists, we update it, and if it's not exist, we insert a new one and return the result of inserting. After that, this is function to verify the code is exist. We use it from the database, the validation register here. We inject the database repo from the constructor. Then in this function we use it to verify. Now if we want to test send verification code or verify, we have to inject the database, our database, our custom database for testing, into the subchild, which is the validation for verify. Okay, now if we go to the testing, how we test our code, we go to the tests. I install the composer just for phpunit. All what we have to do is include phpunit. This is file to load the testing configuration. Then when we start our project, we know if it's testing. Now we are testing, or we are in the production mode. Okay, the test will go from the registration, the database repository. We have to first thing, test get verification code. We start a new object of database. We get the code. We send a phone to this function and check the result. If the result inserted validation insert verification code, we get the verification code, and we query again. We make a query to test if this verification code is inserted in the database for this phone. Okay, this is where we can make sure that this function verification code work correctly, and we test the validation verification code. This is we start a new object of database and get the past verification code. Here we have inserted a new one, or get a new one in this function. Here we have to get it again and check is validate verification code for the phone, and validating code is exist. The last one, test update user. We update the user by update user function with the data, with these data, phone and email with other things, and assert that the result is true. Then we make a query to check if the name and the phone updated. Okay, all of these should be on a clean database, not a production database. Now we will test the private function in our code, which is verify code. It's a private function, but we can invoke method by the class and name of the method with parameters through this function, and then assert true that the result is true. Okay, then we will invoke it and call this function again, but with wrong phone number, error phone. The result should be false. Now we need to test registration validation. Test verification code is 4 digits. To test our verification code, first we have to override our database repository. Our database repository, we don't need to test our database because we test it in a separate section. Now just we need to make sure that the validation is correct. So we inject our database repository, which is alternative here. Always return true, true, true. Okay, this is our dependency. We inject it here for registration validation. Then we inject this validation register in our main class SMS. We don't need to inject anything about SMS and database repository. Just we need to inject the validation should be called with our demo class of database. Then we test the verification code. This class request set request data. We can't, in our system, we can't use the global function as get or post, because in the testing we will suffer from using it. So we create our request class, which can be easily inject or modify the request data and simulate if we have a request with these data. We send verification code 345, and we need not here we don't need to check if this in the database or not. It will be there because we inject our database class. Here just we need to be to check if it is proper, 4 digits, not 5 or 3, and just digits. We call the registration function, not the validation, the registration itself, and this registration will return the errors of validation. If the array of validation array doesn't contain the verification code, then this assert will be true. Then this will success 4435. Now we can check if we remove one letter, if it's this success, and then we remove one letter, then if it's error now, we make sure that the reason of error is just because number of letters. Then we call register again and check if it is has key. Now if it has key, that's mean the validation array message list contain error in the verification code. Okay, also when we add a new letter and change a number with a letter, it should return an validation error. Okay, also for testing email, we insert different type of emails. The first one should be correct, so we don't have the array of validation don't have any error. Then we change small changes to make sure that the this small change cause the validation error. We test the email, we test the first name. The first one should be true, has not has key, then has key with small changes of name to make sure this change occur the error. Now we test the last name, same thing, and test the phone number is Jordanian phone number. This is the phone number, will be true. We check not has key, then we check if it is has key with small changes. Okay, the same thing for verify validation test. This system is very clear code and testable. You can inject anything and change everything and test every single function in this system in perfect. Now let's start testing our system. Just open the terminal, run it, start the PHP unit from our index file, debugging mode, and show the messages of the files. Run, start. This is starting and checking the phone is Jordanian. We have 13 testers successful and asserts 34. This is our test is complete successfully. That's all for today. Thank you.